without further ado, I will introduce our speaker for today. Leang Chung is the founder and CEO of Pelora Stack, a company she launched during COVID. Pelora Stack partners with early stage founders, people teams, and mid-career women to prepare them for their next stage of growth. They do this by providing consulting services, coaching, and experimental learning programs for people leaders and teams. The company also provides small group coaching programs for women who are looking for communities of like-minded people and professional development to advance their careers. So without further ado, Leanne, welcome. We're so excited to have you for part two. And yeah, excited to have this conversation. And I will stop sharing and let you share.
All right. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Hi, everybody. It is nice to be back at the All Raise virtual stage. Super excited to talk to you about this topic because I love it. I love everything about, creating a really positive candidate experience. Selfishly, I've been on the receiving end, right, as a candidate, and I've seen some really great things that have compelled me to want to work for a company, and some things that I just were, red flags for me that I want to take note of and just make sure that as I'm advising different companies on how they're designing and shaping the candidate experience to factor these things in mind. We're also going to talk about recruiting operations best practices as well, because that has such a huge impact on the overall candidate experience. So Marianne already shared with you my background and who I am and what my company does. This is just to provide or illustrate a little bit more about where I came from. I did work in-house in the HR, talent, and people operations capacity, and really serving as a trusted advisor to senior leaders and helping businesses leading transformational changes for business as they migrate from one business phase to the next business phase. And then right now, in addition to partnering with companies and early stage founders on the different infrastructures that they need for their people operations and talent needs, I also have a coaching practice as well in the areas that are listed here. And then I always like to give a shout out for the nonprofit organization that I sit on the board for, which I consider to be a privilege and honor to be there, which is GC4W. And they're one of the leading international nonprofit organizations of the millennium in the areas of gender equality, women, and youth empowerment.
Here we are. Yes, recruitment funnel.
Okay, so let me go back to, so these were the fast facts that you missed. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because these are really important facts. So I'll let it sit here for a little bit just so that you can absorb this, or if you want to do a screenshot of this. And again, Marianne did share that the recording will be available in 48 hours, so you'll still have this. But if you want to take a screenshot of any of these facts or data points that you find helpful, please do so now. When I was pointing out the two stats that I felt were really important, it was this one right here about the majority of job seekers reading 6 reviews before forming an opinion, and then this one over here in terms of how a negative interview experience can change their mind about a role or company they once liked. Okay. So here we are at the recruiting funnel. And to pick up where I last left off, the recruiting funnel is broken up to items or aspects, right, of that funnel that are sitting at the very top, which are 3 different stages, and that's in awareness, consideration, and interest. So these are all of the different actions and all the different ways in which a candidate discovers your company or discovers your brand for the first time, and they start to shape and form an opinion, right, about who you are, what you're about, and what you have to offer, right, as an employer brand. Everything that's sitting on the bottom of the funnel has to do with the actual recruiting stage, right? These are actionable steps that are taking place after the candidate has decided to engage with you as a brand, right? Or you as a company. So they're applying for a position, they're going through the interview stages, and they're being considered for hiring. So what exactly is recruiting operations and where does it fall in? Recruiting operations happens at the bottom of the funnel, right? So that's in the application, evaluate, and hire stage. And recruiting operations pertains to the process for all actions that take place at the bottom of the funnel. So this is where we're going to spend a lot of time, because there are all of these different nuances and little steps and aspects of that process that really makes or breaks a candidate's decision to either stay in the process or to vacate the process. And we're going to go over some best practices and things to just keep in mind. So starting with the top of the funnel, with your employer brand. Your employer brand is going to be shaped by these 6 touch points. Your company website, an employer review site, social media, any type of news or press release, word of mouth, and job descriptions. So the interaction that they have, right, with your brand, whether they're seeing, they're viewing reviews, right, employee reviews of you as an employer on an employer site, or they hear about you through a friend, right? Those are the different aspects that is going to really shape their opinion. Therefore, it's really important to be mindful of these things, right, and to make sure that you're protecting, right, what is existing out there about your brand as much as possible, to make sure that you are projecting the type of image that you want to project, right, as an employer and as a company, right, to prospective candidates. So in terms of best practices for your website, so this is where you have a lot of control at your fingertips. The things that works really well and is viewed favorably, right, is injecting a founder's story. What was the reason that compelled you to start this business, right? Is there a specific mission, right, or underlying purpose that is larger than you? It's larger than driving revenue that you're really passionate about, that you want to share with them, because it's going to attract the type of people who are really connected to that story. Sharing your mission and values, showing images of real employees. So don't, not using stock photography, but just real employees where they can actually see someone that they're going to interact with, right, if they were to accept a position with you and work, side by side with these people. Any kind of image that reflects your company culture. So team events, meetings, hackathons, office space, right? Even though we're not there, right? You just want to be able to share as much as possible things that is going to be really, really reflective of what you have to offer and what makes your company culture unique. And then talking about what the candidate will gain from working at your company, and then also sharing any type of like recognition or awards that you've received that's worth mentioning and highlighting, because those are things that are that can make your brands really attractive to a prospective candidate as well. I pull examples of best practices that I really like out there. So this is a company that some of you may know of. It's Away. They have these really cool luggages with a rechargeable battery, where you can recharge your phone. And their culture is all about travel. It's all about the journey, right? And they also have this section here in terms of like what we believe, where they talk about how they're actually partnering and giving or donating, right, to organizations, right, that are doing good in the world. So this is something that, is going to be seen very favorably, right, among candidates. And what I also love is they have this feature, they have a scroll where you can meet their team. And their team photos are actually individual photos of them while they were traveling, right? So again, it really is connected to their brand in terms of traveling, right, and the products that they sell. But it's showcasing their employees in a real, like, authentic way. And there's just, really cool locations, really cool photographs, and nothing, it's not a it doesn't feel retouched, right? It doesn't feel fake. And so this is just like a really cool way to reflect to showcase the team, and then also to showcase the company culture, right? And connecting with the brand. This is also another really great example. I know there's a lot of words here. It's not intended for you to read the words, but just to kind of see some good things that, in terms of how they structure their site. I love this piece. So they actually have different sections. So the company is DigitalOcean. They're a cloud services company. And they have this section that talks about us, right? And when they say us, they refer to different teams, right, within their entire organization. And within each team, they actually wrote out a little mission, right, about their team and what kind of, what their purpose is, right, within the company. And also what you can expect, right, if you were working on that team, and then what they look for in candidates. So this is just always living there. It's evergreen on their site, which I just think it's really cool. And it shows a lot of personality, right? And it also shows that they really took the time to care about sharing this information. And that's going to be viewed favorably by candidates. As you can see here, they're also showing different types of recognition that they receive. They're showing an image of real people, and I know they're real because I actually know this person who's on the screen. So this is just, again, like another like really authentic way of showcasing what the brand and the company is all about. And then there are employee testimonials as well that's reflected. So these are some of, a couple of, small examples of how to illustrate or bring this to life, so that you can really connect with the type of people that you're hoping to hire, right, and bring into your company one day. So employer review sites or employer reviews are big, and you could find them anywhere. So there are the traditional review sites like Glassdoor and Comparably, right? And then now there's, this anonymous employer review site called Blind, where you don't have to show, who you are and submit a review of the company that you're working for. It's, now there are review sites that are specific, that have much more of a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. So they will talk about, what it's like to work as a woman, right, in a specific organization. There's some that are very focused for like early career hires, for internships. And then there's just other, like social media platforms, right? And other types of platforms like Reddit, where people are going to be talking about your brand. So this is one of the things where this information is sitting out all over the place, which is why it's so important to pay attention to this and to be really, really engaged and very intentional about how you want your brand to be showcased out there in the public, right? And how it's reflected. So the last aspect that I had listed there is the job description. So many prospective candidates are going to take a look at your job description, and they're going to form an opinion about it based on how you write your job description. So these are some best practices. Really focus on the job responsibilities and what they're going to learn on the job. You definitely want to talk about the company's mission, values, and culture. Glassdoor they have like on one of their stats that when you list the EEO statement or the Equal Employment Opportunity Statement, that is viewed favorably. And then also now, because it's a very, very hot topic, right, having some form of position or stand that you're taking in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion is also something that is really important. And candidates want to see this, right? They want to see where you stand. This is one data point that I pulled from from that initial slide as just like a point to remember. Job posts that highlights responsibilities instead of requirements get 14% more applicants. Okay. And these are some quick tips that I found from a LinkedIn blog post by Kate Riley. And these are some really quick ways that you can easily apply this, right, to any of the job postings that you may have today that doesn't cost any money. And they're really fantastic tips. So, she suggests cut out the long paragraph about your company because that's what your company website is for. Ruthlessly delete buzzwords, right? Buzzwords are not attractive for people. It just doesn't resonate. So you want to keep those job descriptions as conversational and real and authentic as possible. Instead of utilizing the ideal candidate to describe the person that you're looking to attract, use the word you. So it's as though you're talking to that specific person. Changing the subheading. So instead of job qualifications, list you're good at. So again, it's talking to that individual job seeker, right, or candidate. And describing a day in the life of like what they can expect, right? If they were to take on that job. And then this is really important particularly for engineers and designers, talking about problems and projects that they're going to be working on, because that will be a deciding factor as to whether or not this is something that's sexy enough for them to apply for, or they're just going to pass on your job description. Okay. So now we're going to jump into the bottom of the funnel. So the bottom of the funnel, again, is where all of the recruiting operations happens. So this involves the tech stack that you have in place, the application process, interviews and assessments, the decision-making, the speed of your decision-making, right? How well or how effective or ineffective you're communicating with the candidates throughout that process. How you deliver a offer or rejection, both are equally as important. And then what does a handoff look like in terms of onboarding them into the role? So I have the list of questions that were submitted here, and there was one question that was asked that I thought was important to bring up. So this one person asked, what do you think is the most obvious but least communicated founder pitfall in the hiring process? So I believe that one of the most obvious, right, is recruiting is not, it's not rocket science, right? It's not like things are overly complicated to understand, and many of us have touched different aspects of this process at some point, right? Whether we're the hiring manager, we're the one that's seeking someone to bring into our company, or we've been on the receiving end where we've been a candidate. And so we've all had some exposure to it to some degree. But where I think the pitfall is, that's very common, is that because you have that knowledge, I think sometimes you can become dismissive of like, oh, I already know this process, I understand it, I get it, right? And then you miss the little small nuances, right? And the important steps throughout that process that really shape, right, what that candidate experience is going to look like. And it really makes or breaks that experience, right? Between being stellar and fantastic to being something that was really unattractive, right, and painful, right, to some degree. And so that's how I would answer that question. So in terms of tech stack, there's a lot that's out there, and this could be broken down to even like more subheadings, right, underneath each category. But I think this is like a good way to kind of shape the 8 categories. So I split them up into applicant tracking systems, job aggregators, AI automation, candidate relationship management, video interviews, assessments and testing, recruiting analytics, and then human capital management systems. So these are some examples of what of the different companies that live out there. Some of these do not live neatly in one box, so I force fit them into one category where they happen to excel in that particular area. But a lot of these brands or companies or software solutions actually sit in a few of these different categories. But this is just to give you an example. Referring to one of the questions that was asked, that was submitted, there was a a question about what's the best recruiting tech stack, right, for a seed or Series A round company. And the way I would answer that is, if you were to make one investment, right, what would that be? I would say invest in an applicant tracking system. So your applicant tracking system is how you're going to manage the entire workflow, right, of that recruiting process. It's where your candidates are going to see your job postings, right, because it's connected to your ATS system. It's where your candidates are going to communicate with you. It's where you're going to have your metrics. All of your data is going to sit there. And then it's also going to help you organize, right? Other aspects of that process, and then also communicating with your hiring manager. So if you only have so much money to spend, I would say start here and invest in an applicant tracking system, right? To help you organize that. And then in terms of job aggregators, you're not spending money on this, right? In terms of postings, right? Or you may be spending some money, right, to a certain degree, right, to do postings. So you definitely need exposure, right, to your job. So you definitely want to put it out there, right, and make sure that you have the furthest reach as possible. In terms of building up that awareness and getting a really, really rich talent pool to be attracted to the roles that you have in place. And then the next thing I would suggest is to look at free options. So I love Texio. Texio is a writing augmentation platform. So what they do is they will actually evaluate your job description to see how favorable your job description will be viewed, right, from an equity, right, from a DEI lens, right. So it will actually tell you your job description is very masculine. So it's going to attract much more of a male candidate, right? And it's going to be viewed unfavorably towards, female candidates. And so if you're looking to have a really diverse workforce, like this type of information is really valuable. And what's cool about Texio is that you can actually, I think they let you try out, 3 job postings, right? Just so that you can test it out and demo their platform. So that would be like a really cool way, right, to test something out and use that if you don't have a ton of job recs, right, that you have open right now to hire for. So that would be my suggestion there. And then in terms of, there's so much that's in the AI and automation world, like Teamable is a employee referral platform that connects with your employees and really helps you to automate that process of generating leads through referrals from the existing organization or people within your company. And then, there's a lot that's going on in the candidate relationship management space. So this functions very similar to a CRM from a marketing perspective and engaging with your potential customers. So this has a lot to do with passive candidates. Sometimes like the magic, right, in securing really great candidates, is catching them at the right moment in their life. So a solution like this helps you to keep engaged, right, with those passive candidates, right, throughout the entire, stage, right, of their time at a company, so that you're maintaining that relationship, you're staying top of mind for them, so that when they have reached that moment where they realize, okay, you know what, something happened and I'm ready to leave, or I've outgrown the place that I'm at and I'm ready to talk, you're going to be front and center, right? Because you've been maintaining and sustaining that relationship with that passive candidate throughout that stage. So these solutions are helping you to do just that. This is something that, it's probably an investment that you're going to make much further along, but figured, it's important for me to just share that with you as, another aspect of the different, tech stacks that are out there in the recruiting space. And then,
Leanne,
yes.
There was a question from the audience. What do you think of GEM?
GEM?
I don't know if that's okay. That is
Is
fine
it
then. GEM.
Oh, okay. I'm going to look them up. I have not heard of it, so I cannot provide feedback on it, but I will look into it. Thanks for that suggestion. Can you share what they do exactly?
I will also text that into the chat.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so we'll wait for that. Okay, so these are the other examples of video interview platforms, assessments and testing, recruiting analytics, and human capital management platforms. So this HackerRank, I cannot I love this one as well. So what's cool about HackerRank is this is utilized to do coding testing, right, and coding exercise in a real environment, right, where it's not that they're whiteboarding, right, which is an unnatural environment that someone would be coding in. So this whole platform has been built out to recreate or simulate that real environment. It allows the person who's interviewing, to take notes. There's recording of the videos, right? So you can go back and rewatch it. It captures all of your notes, right, throughout the process. And it's just a really, really great solution, right? If you're interested in pursuing some type of tool to recreate that real life example and to really test out, right, your engineering talents, coding, right, capabilities. So definitely recommend that. And then there's a number of other things, like there's this eSkill platform, right, that's testing out different types of skills, right, and this is much more of like a soft skills, right, testing. So that could be another option, right, depending on what it is that you're looking for. And I added in recruiting analytics, right? Most of these platforms actually have some form of recruiting analytics, right? So you don't need to necessarily purchase an additional software, right, to be able to provide that. But my guess is that they probably have a much more robust platform, right, in terms of how they're slicing and dicing information, which is why they have that plugin. But I just wanted to put it in here, right, just in case this is something that you're interested in. And then Yellow actually has a pretty broad array of products, right, and different ways that they're different capabilities. But one of the aspects that they do have that they really sell on and promote is the recruiting analytics within their platform, which is why I embedded them here. And then your human capital management systems are actually, I wouldn't say they're necessarily recruiting, although Workday and Ceridian does have an ATS option, right, within their platform as well that you can add. These are mainly to store information about your employees. So once you get to that stage where you're doing that handoff, right, to go into the onboarding process, this is where the information transitions from the ATS system into this human capital management system to then plug in and then capture all that information and then store it, right, once they're your employee. These systems are I would say they're more enterprise level systems, but there's a lot of other options that are very similar. I like to share this because even if you're not ready to purchase into this, because I think it helps for you to see what how enterprises are set up, right? If you're looking at best practices, right, and then from there understand what are the different options available, and then you can look at a scaled down option that's much more affordable and much more applicable to the stage that you happen to be in terms of your the growth of your organization. And I actually found this company while doing some research that I thought was really cool. So they actually manage workflow. So one of the things that's probably the most painful process, right, is all of the different new hire documents and forms, right, when someone is onboarding. And if there's a way to just automate that, right, as much as possible. So it really provides like a very seamless, right, and easy low barrier approach, right, to getting all those things done, then it's always going to be viewed favorably from a candidate perspective who just recently accepted a job, or from your employees, right, who are managing that process. So I just plugged that in here in case you wanted to check that out. So I just wanted to check in to see if the person who asked about GEM had something else to add, right, in terms of more information about GEM, or if there were any questions that popped up. And for some reason, I can't view the questions. I can view the chat, but I can't view questions.
So they just dropped in the link to the website.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for that information. I will check that out afterwards because I'm not familiar with that company. So in terms of the application process, best practices, aim for easy apply. So the easy apply button is the most attractive thing. Make it as low barrier as possible, right, for them to submit their application. Avoid duplication of effort. There is nothing more frustrating when a candidate is being asked to complete an application and fill in their experience after they've been asked to upload their resume, because all that information is already there. And pulling from the stats that I shared with you in the that first slide, this is another thing to remember, is that 60% of job seekers quit an application midway because of length and complexity of the application process. So again, our goal is to retain as many qualified candidates as possible in that recruitment funnel. And so this would be, a really easy way, right, to make or break the decision, right, to stay or to leave. So setting up your interview process, right, and the assessments. The questions that are really important to ask yourself is how many rounds of interviews are needed before you can make a decision? And then who should be on the interview panel or loop? That question is really important because it's going to dictate how long, right, that interview process is going to entail. And depending on the seniority of the person and how, busy or crazy their schedule is, right, it could also dictate like when they're available to interview. So these are really important things to prepare, right, and get squared away before you jump or launch a search process. Also, once you've decided on who's part of that interview panel, understanding what the criteria for a hiring decision is, right, before you start the process is also another critical aspect, right? Determining what type of assessment tools, right? So if you decide, okay, you want to test their technical skills utilizing HackerRank, right? You definitely want to decide this beforehand before going in. And I put in virtual onsite because because of COVID, companies aren't doing onsites. This is generally that last step, right, of the process where, candidates are coming to the physical office location, meeting with multiple people, getting an office tour. And that really helps to create a full experience of what it's going to be like to work at the company and to work for the brand. And so it's important to be really thoughtful about how you design this experience. Now on-sites are continue to happen, but they're just happening in the virtual space. And so one of the things that's also important to include, even though it's in the virtual space, is that a lot of candidates are still asking to see the office, right? And if they happen to be nearby, some candidates are even requesting if they can physically go and visit the office before they make a decision, because they know that eventually we're going to get to a place where we will return to the office and they want to get a feel for what that experience is going to be like. So just expect that. and build that in. And then you also want to make sure that you're incorporating the company culture and values into that interview process, right? And both communicating this to the candidate and then also evaluating them on it as well. Decision-making speed is another important factor in the candidate experience. So what is going to be the process for decision-making? Are you going for consensus, right? Meaning everyone on the interview panel has to give a thumbs up before you decide to hire someone? Is it going to be based on majority of thumbs up, right? And you make a hiring decision? Or a manager that makes the final call, right? So this is something that is really important to square away because it really could delay your decision-making process as you go deeper into the interview process. And then ultimately, what is going to be this deciding factor, right? So if you need a tiebreaker between two really, really strong candidates, what's going to be the deciding factor that's going to make you choose one candidate over the other candidate? That's also another thing to square away beforehand. And then how many finalists do you need to see before making a decision? Is it really important for you to have a couple of candidates to reference against one another before making a final decision? Or are you comfortable meeting with a really stellar candidate and then just making a decision after meeting that one finalist? And then the last piece is understanding or mapping out if there's enough breadth of areas that are covered in the interview process across the entire interview panel or team. So you want to have as much coverage as possible throughout the interview process so that you're maximizing every single interaction that the candidate has with people in the interview process. So you want to capture as much data and as much information as possible to form a decision. And the way that you do that is by organizing who is going to talk about what, so that you're covering all bases and you're getting a real holistic view of what that candidate's qualifications are, right? And what their potential is. And it helps you to really form a decision as to whether or not they're the right candidate or the wrong candidate for the job. So this is an example of a typical interview process where there's going to be a phone screen with a recruiter who's going to go through some general information, right, to see if they should filter that candidate out or keep them in the pipeline. And then the second interview, usually phone or video with a team member. Sometimes, depending on how big or small the organization, they may be meeting with the hiring manager because the hiring manager wants to get a feel for whether or not to invite them for a full on-site and meet with additional people. Or it could be just, with a fellow team member, who's going to screen that further. And then eventually you're going to make a decision, bring them on for an on-site. And for the on-site, they're going to meet with a number of people. So this could be as extensive as you want it to be or as tight as you want it to be, right, with very few people. So in this example, I've laid out 4 people who are in this interview loop. And the 4 people have an assigned area that they're going to be interviewing and evaluating the candidate on. So one person's going to test out their technical knowledge. One person's going to evaluate how well they are with collaboration and leadership. One person's going to evaluate them on their problem-solving skills. And then another person's going to evaluate them on their match with the company values and company culture. Okay, so this is a way for you to structure that process so that you're covering all bases, right, and being as organized as possible, and everyone has a specific focus area that they're going to talk to the candidate about, where when you come together and you discuss that candidate, it's going to give you a lot of rich data about who they are and what they have to offer. So the next aspect, that's part of recruiting operations and part of that bottom of the funnel is the communication that you're maintaining throughout that process. So what does, the follow-up look like, right? And how do you stay in touch with them throughout that journey? So It's really important, follow up after each interview to set the expectations of what's next, right? And to provide feedback. You want to offer transparency into the process. So how many interviews can they expect, right? Before you make a decision. Where do they stand against other candidates in the pipeline? And then what's the timeline that you're working with? Are you expecting or anticipating to make a decision by a certain point in time? And again, going back to the stats, 51% of job seekers are frustrated with the lack of communication from a company, right? So again, this really could make or break their decision to either stay or leave. How you handle rejections, another really important point. So even when you decide to not go with a candidate, it's important to still close this out in a really respectful way. So you want to inform the candidate of your decision as soon as possible. If you are rejecting them at that first or second round, an email communication is perfectly fine to let them know that you've decided to go with other candidates. If you are rejecting someone at the finalist round where they've gone through an on-site, it is best to give them a phone call to let them know, that you've decided to go with a different candidate. And then depending on what your company practices, if you can provide feedback, I know some companies don't offer feedback to candidates. It's always helpful to share that with them and they'll ask. So let's say you're making an offer, fantastic, you found the right person. So definitely want to share this within a reasonable time. Do expect that candidates will negotiate their offer. So just factor it into your timeline as well. Also, candidates appreciate hearing from their future manager. So having that future manager give them a call to say, hey, congratulations, I'm so excited, right, to have you on board and join the team, or even sending an email, right, to them means a lot, right? And it really helps to close that, to close that deal, right, or close a decision, right, for them to make a decision to join. And, if there's any way to personalize a message, definitely do that. I love this little example of what Spotify does. They actually send them a playlist, right, to tell them, why they need them on the team, right? So it reflects their brand, right? And it's definitely, reflective of their culture. And it's just like a really unique way, right, to like personalize it and make the candidate feel special. And then after an offer has been accepted, you're, want to make sure there's a seamless handoff, right, to, the separate process or a separate team that's going to, have them complete, any necessary paperwork to onboard them. Definitely want to send them a message to welcome them to the organization, explain next steps, and then what they can expect on their first day. So, wow, we're getting close to time. These are the things that are top of mind for candidates today for you to remember and just be prepared with answers. And I want to bring your attention to this and highlight this because it's very unique to the moment that we're at in the world right now and the issues that candidates really care about. And some of these are a little tricky because you may not have an answer for them right away, but they're going to care about it and they're going to ask. So the first one is, what's the company's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what are what is the company doing about it, right? To create a culture that is diverse, equitable, and inclusive. The next thing is going to be about remote work, right, or flexible work, right, and more specifically as it relates to childcare needs. So there are some companies that are taking a position already, like Airbnb, to say we're going to offer remote forever, right? So that's something that is top of mind for people, and they're going to ask, is the remote option unique to the pandemic, or is that something that you're going to be willing to offer to me if I join as something I'll have forever, right? That could really make or break the decision to join. What's the return to office date and what's the plan? And then when we do return into the office, what are the safety protocols that you're going to put in place to make sure that it's going to be a safe environment for me to work in, right? And for the rest of the organization to work in. Health and wellness is something that it continues to be really important. There's a lot of attention that's being paid to mental health, right, and wellness. So they are likely to inquire about, what type of wellness programs you're going to offer. And then, what are your pay practices, right? And more specifically, what are your pay practices as it pertains to an equitable and inclusive environment, right? What is your practice in terms of promotions, raises, right? Equity, right? All of those things they're going to inquire about. And then now, because of the remote nature, right, of our work, is what is this virtual onboarding and integration experience going to look like for me, that I should anticipate, if I were to accept a job offer with you in your company. So that is it. That was a lot. I hope that addressed a lot of the things that you were curious about and was hoping to learn. So I just wanted to pause here to see if there were any questions from the group that you would like for me to address or maybe go deeper into.
So as of right now, there are no questions, but for those who have any, please feel free to add your questions into the Q&A box. And if not, we can also go off the sign up that we have.
Oh, right. Okay. I have that set up on a separate laptop, which is why I keep looking over here. So there was a question about, best practices for writing copy. Again, I'm going to recommend Texio for that. There was also a question about, finding or attracting underrepresented candidates in the pipeline. So again, different types of tools like Texio is really helping to address that, where it's showing that the company is being really cognizant of how they present their brand, right, and how they present opportunities to, prospective candidates, right, to make sure that they're attracting the right people. Again, with your job descriptions, including that EEO message, right, or your position as a company on diversity, equity, and inclusion will help that as well. There was a question about how to create psychological safety in the hiring process. I hope that every single hiring process will have, will create psychological safety, because it is a confidential process. I think, the way in which you can provide that experience is, making sure that you communicate with the candidate as much as possible about what's going on, right? Being transparent in terms of like where they stand and where you are at in that process, right? Helps for them to understand, where they stand, right? And provides that safety. A lot of candidates will be part of your interview process while they're employed somewhere else, right? And so they want to make sure that this is not going to go back to the employer. So it's really important to not talk about these things. Don't do reference checks, right, if that's part of your process, until after an offer has been extended, right? And checking in with the candidate to make sure that employment verification doesn't happen with their current employer, right? Because that could expose them even further. So those are the different steps that you can take to create such psychological safety. And then I just want to be cognizant of if there's any other questions from the group here. There was a question about what are the top 3 challenges that recruiters face today. I think that the challenge is, addressing hard to answer questions, right? With the things that I had laid out here, right? In terms of top of mind for our candidates. A lot of these are very, very unique to what's going on today. The needs of employees have changed so drastically because of COVID and because of the social justice movement, right? In addressing systemic racism and unconscious bias in the workplace. And so these are things that And I'm not saying that those things never existed. In the past, they have, which is why we're in the position that we're in right now. But because it is so prominent, right, and it has such a large presence, that it's forcing companies, right, to address things that they may not have had to address in the past. So I think that, you know, is presenting a challenge for recruiters. And the other thing is just the talent pool. There are so many new jobs and new skills that are being created, and sometimes you just don't have the luxury of finding candidates that have experience, right, in that area, especially, you know, if it's still fairly new. And so the challenge there is, how do you find candidates that have the potential, or how do you provide training, right, in new skills in order to get them up to speed, and you know, to set them up for success in their new roles. So those are the things that I would highlight there. And it looks like we're just about at time, so
Yeah.
I'll just pause there.
Yes, thank you so much, Leang, for walking us through that. And I don't know why you can't see me. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Can't see me. I can't see me. Well, thank you everyone who joined us today. And thank you, Leang, for like the walkthrough and just the depth of information you shared with us. For everyone else on the call, we'd love to get your feedback. So please fill out the survey. I dropped it into the chat. And yeah, we look forward to staying in touch, Leang. I really love this. And again, for all of those on the call, this will be recorded and posted on our website. So definitely keep your eyes out for that. And without further ado, that is perfect timing. Thank you again, Leanne, for everything that you do for us.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hope that was informative. And then just connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any follow-up questions or just want to stay connected.
Yes, sounds good. All right. Well, have a good day, everyone. And we will see you at our next event.
Okay.
I'll see you later, Jen.
Bye.